Okay, now we're on.
Aloha! Welcome back. We had a brief interlude. We hopefully have solved our technical difficulties, but thanks for joining us again. We're going to start over. I'm Hadley Anderson. I'm the education specialist at Lyon Arboretum. Today we are in the grounds department and we are with Jessica Adinolfi, and she is our GIS manager. And if you don't mind reiterating, what does GIS mean and what does a GIS manager do here at Lyon?
Yeah, of course. So GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems, and basically it's just modern day cartography.
Excellent.
Yeah, so basically what I do is I am responsible for mapping all the plants in our living collection and then the ground. So trails, trail markers, benches, signs, memorial plaques, various things. I map it all.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so basically just a little history about the mapping here. So for a long time everything was just hand drawn, right? And actually I have a few examples here. Closer?
Come closer.
Okay. You guys can kind of see here, so this is an area in the upper lawn and Fern Valley, Hodgepodge area. So these are all kind of terms that we use that some folks might not be familiar with, but just various areas in the grounds. And you can see the plants and the accession numbers. And so this is what the ground staff used to use. And so this is what they would make and use to manage the collections. And then in the 90s, they brought survey grade equipment out and did some more accurate mapping and then digitizing in AutoCAD. However, we don't use that anymore. We are using ArcGIS, which is the kind of industry standard software, mainstream software for the GIS industry. And so my main tool, besides the software, is a handheld GPS unit. And so some folks might be familiar with the GPS on their phone, or
I feel like a lot of people are familiar with GPS these days, just with like locations and phones and everything seems to be tied in with.
Yes, totally. Yeah. Most people can't even navigate without it now, right?
I remember the days of MapQuest. Anyway,
right.
Show my age. Okay.
And so, yeah, so this is just a real powerful unit that will give us very accurate location information of whatever it is that I'm going to be mapping on the grounds. And so you mentioned lasers, and so what Hadley was referring to is that we use this little part right here is a laser rangefinder, and so we can use that to find an offset location for a tree. Like if we're not getting good satellite coverage or something, we can do an offset. Or what I use it for mostly is getting the height of the tree. So
cool.
You point it at the tree, and then you point it at the bottom, and then the top, and then it calculates the geometry for you, and it tells you how tall the tree is.
Oh man, you don't even have to do that problem from 9th grade math where they have the shadow of the tree or anything like that.
Right.
We have a tool for this.
Yeah. So if folks are not familiar with, there is a public web map that is accessible from our website, and that's what's on the screen here behind me. I'm not sure if you can see. Can you see it, Jenna?
Yeah, I can see it a little.
Okay. So on that public web map, you'll see the nearly 2,000 plants that I have walked up to with that unit and mapped, and all of the data associated with that plant, so you can find out where it's from, where it's native to, or where we got it. Sometimes we share plants with other botanic gardens, and so you can find that sort of information. You can get the phenology.
So why is it important that we map our grounds and our collections?
Well, I mean, there's a number of reasons why you might want to know where things are, but for the grounds specifically, we get a lot of research requests, and so it's really important for us to know where the plants are because maybe somebody is a palm expert, right? So the palm family, we have a huge number of individuals from that family represented on the grounds, and so that's one thing you could look on the map. You could see, okay, where are all the palm trees located? And what types of palm trees do we have? And so it's important for us to be able to know where they are so we can go check on them, make sure they're still alive and doing well, and say a researcher needs a sample from one of them, or a photograph or something like that. And so it's very important for us to know the location and be able to find the plants easily.
Now I imagine that, especially working in grounds, like prior to the 90s, before we started digitizing collections, it was probably pretty arduous to find things using a map and going out on the grounds, right?
Yeah, I think there's a history of people that are so dedicated to this place that they know the grounds like the back of their hand. And I think those people were a huge resource, right? Where, there are still people here today that, you say like, where is this one plant? And they're like, oh yeah, it's over that one bridge and up that contour trail, and and so
it's next to this other tree.
Yeah, and it's just that intimate knowledge of this place that is so valuable and rare, and we're trying to make that more widespread by having this more accurate and easy to interact with map. Yeah.
Excellent. So I do have a question too about thinking about collections, since we are in a living collection. It's different than a herbarium per se, because you have all of your collections in one space. They're all categorized and organized because they are not living collections. Can some of our living collections migrate a bit? And so that's one of the reasons why we have to keep track of them too.
Totally. Yeah. So the public web map does not have this data on it, but on our staff version of the map, we do track if we find
Cakey?
Yeah. So if we find any invasive species, which do pop up occasionally, right? And so we want to address those right away, and we share that data with OISC, the Invasive Species Council. But then also just for our knowledge of our collection, right? So, maybe we have a tree that was planted a long time ago before people realized that it has the potential to naturalize and maybe spread and become a weed, and having this, the detailed location information and the ability to track that would help us better manage that. And so on our staff version of the map, we do have plants that we are keeping an eye on, basically. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, and also hotspots, so we can kind of track the source. Like if we're noticing we're having, like false ava or something like that, it's one of our weeds that we have to manage. Where is it? Where's the source, right? It's like if we keep working in this one area, we need to figure out where is that coming from, and strategize a way to kind of manage and hopefully eradicate those invasive species.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah,
cool. What else are you working on with GIS? How is for people who haven't been on our public map yet, what are some features you want to talk about?
Yeah, so on the public map, of course, there are the plants, right? So you can engage with our living collection in that way, right? From the comfort of your own home and the safety of your own home, being able to check out the plants, and there's photographs of many of them, not all of them, but most of them. But then also there's trails, so you can look into our trails, and we're trying to do some more named trails. So
nice.
Yeah, so for people that maybe haven't hiked up here in a while, that's one of the things we're trying to do is create more established and maintained trails that we have named and are a little bit easier to navigate. So some people who have hiked up here know that sometimes you can get lost pretty easily in the jungle up here. So so the trails are on there, and some points of interest also. So I talk to staff and volunteers and visitors about what some of their favorite places are, and so those are on there as well. We have some regular hikers that have pointed out some features along the trails that they really enjoy, and so I've tried to include those in the map also. Let's see, what else is on there?
You've got a lot of different shapes and colors on there.
Yeah.
Can you talk about some of the key items?
So we take a closer look
let's
for
get a
the
closer
people
look.
at home.
Yeah. So, as Hadley was just saying, there's lots of shapes and colors, and it can kind of be a little bit overwhelming for some people, but all the shapes and the colors are actually informative, and so they are grouped taxonomically. So the different shapes are indicative of what greater taxonomic group they are part of. For example, gymnosperms is just an example. And then by family. And so the different colors indicate the different families. So you can kind of see the golden squares, like in this area, those are all palm trees. And so that's an easy way to see, you know, different groups of plants. However, I'm going to be changing some of the symbology for the public web map.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's kind of in the works for this year, just because the families are a little bit more informative for people with a science background. And so for staff, it's perfect. But for the public, we want to make it a little bit more user-friendly. And so my plan is to change that symbology so that it's by habit, so tree, shrub, herb, so you can kind of get a better idea
of like what you're looking at.
Yeah. So it's just a little bit more complicated to symbolize it that way, so it's going to take me a little time. But the plan is by the end of the year that's how that map will look.
That's the difference.
Excellent.
Yeah. So let's see. Was there anything else that I want to talk about with that? Oh, you can search on there too. So if there's any plants in, like specifically, we get calls a lot like, hey, do you have this plant on the ground? So you can just search right in there.
Can you search by common name as well as?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and because common names are not standardized, it may not, you know, it may not pop up exactly or align exactly, but we're trying to build that in there to have all the common names that people might use.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but
so if so, recommend to the public, if you go onto our public living plant collection website, maybe look up the scientific name for your common plant name first. Maybe that's a little bit easier.
yeah, or if you try the common name, if it doesn't work, then maybe go that route.
Awesome. Okay, great.
But yeah, I try to make it very searchable, so you can search by various things like, you know, edibility or nativity or, you know, whatever. So yeah, so
a lot of fun. So what's a typical day like for you?
So for me, I am part in the office, part in the field. So usually I'll coordinate with Liloa, the grounds manager, about, you know, what are the high priority areas for mapping. And so then I'll go out and I'll do the field mapping with my trusty GPS unit. And then I bring in the data from the raw data from the field, and there's a level of processing that has to happen. And then I digitize it using that ArcGIS software that I was talking about earlier. And something that is kind of new with that for me is kind of bringing me back to grad school is writing scripts and programming. And so that's kind of the direction a lot of this data management is headed, right? It's like you got to know how to program. And so I'm learning a new programming language. So
and database and all sorts of things, right?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So
So
a lot of data management.
so after leading into that, how do you prioritize what areas of the field to map that day?
So Liloa is really kind of in charge of that. So
Okay.
as the grounds manager, he has that greater knowledge of what plants are where and what areas, like, for example, if there is an area where there are a lot of plants that we don't actually have a positive ID on, or we need to go and do lots of clearing in order to access the accessions, then those areas might be lower on the list. Whereas the areas that are a little more accessible or more visible to the public, or where we have like real, you know, confident ID or that type of thing, or signage and tags and things like that, those would be more like a high priority area.
Oh, okay.
And so that's reflected in the map, right? You'll see areas that are a little more bare, and it's not because there aren't plants there, you know.
Guarantee you there are plants
Yeah,
there.
guaranteed. No, so I mean, some of the areas I would say that are the most robust are the native Hawaiian garden, right? So that's an area that a lot of our visitors are very familiar with because it's so close to the visitor center. It's very accessible with the trail, you know, very nice trails.
And we have some lovely information, especially since we have an entire ethnobotany collection and things like that about those things. So we do get a lot of questions, and I say that as a member of the education department only for about 6 months. We got a lot of questions about what plant is this and everything like that, and I'm sure our docents do too. So
Yeah.
it's good to know that plant that you never even considered before. What is it?
Yeah.
Especially since it's flowering right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of people will ask.
Yeah. So yeah, the Hawaiian garden is definitely the most accurate and give a good representation of what's actually out there on the grounds. The ethnobotanical garden, that area also, we've been doing a lot of work out there, a lot of planting, and so that area I've been working a lot.
Spice Hill too.
Yeah, Spice Hill, haven't been doing a ton of mapping there.
Well, it's
but
because they took out and replanted a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So they did a complete kind of vamp of that area. There's still some of the familiar plants that you'll see there. However, there's some lovely new trails and all sorts of stuff, and we'll be super excited to debut that when we're open again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, another area where the grounds crew has done a lot of work, and I tried to kind of represent that as far as the public map, is the First Valley Trail. And so that's one of, I was talking about the named trails and such. So the First Valley Trail is a trail that the guys have been working on a lot in the last year. So that trail is nice and open. It got a lot of use before we closed down. It has little tags that one of our volunteers gave us, so that's to help people know they're on the right track. And so you can check out that trail on the map, and then when we open up again, you can come and check it out in person.
that would be fantastic.
I know.
I don't want to take up too much of your time. Do we have any questions, Jennifer?
We don't have any questions that came in yet. Last chance to send in your questions for Jessica. Before you do sign off, can you show us the hand-drawn map one more time?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
hand-drawn map one more time. I think this is the same one.
Come closer.
Yeah. So you can see that this is what the grounds people had to use, right? And what they would make and maintain. And while it definitely works, it's a little bit more difficult to use and not as user-friendly or accurate as...
Probably have to make a dozen copies so that your original stayed the same, and that
Oh, here.
Yep.
Ew.
It's okay.
We're drifting.
Drifts a little bit. That's okay. But we have some other projects that you're working on that we talked about prior to our last attempt at this broadcast. You're working volunteer-wise with Bishop Museum on a project.
Yeah. So I just wanted to share a little bit about that, since this is something that's kind of come up for me since schedule changes and things with in response to Corona. Is volunteering with Bishop Museum on the Plants of Hawaii project. So it's a multi-year project. We're just kind of in the beginning, and I'm just one of, I'm sure, many volunteers that they're going to have. But it's a really exciting project, and I really encourage anybody that's interested in plants in Hawaii to check out this website, plantsofhawaii.org. Yeah, get involved if you like.
All right, we did get in a question.
Okay.
How do you have to map in all?
Ooh. Map so far. How about that?
So I've mapped just about 2,000, and there are 19,000 in the collection. So I'm like, a little over 10% of the way there.
So she's gonna be with us for a while. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah. And ideally, I would also map things that are not part of our collection, right? So we have plants out on the ground that we don't consider them accessions, right? So we don't manage all the data associated with them. We plant them, for various reasons, right? So like in the urban spice garden, we might plant some things just because they're herbs or spices, you know?
Rosemary.
Yeah, exactly. So we might not accession a rosemary shrub. That's one example. So, but I would still want to depict that on the map, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So more than 19,000.
We've got over 200 acres that are here at Lion Arboretum, and we are from, of course, where we start out at our visitor center all the way to the ridgeline. Now, I don't think we expect to have plants or even access to all the way to the ridgeline, but it's a lot of plants, and that's way more than 19,000. So
When we open up again, will you be looking for help, volunteers?
Yeah, so I have had a couple of folks volunteer with me, and it's been really great, really fun. And so if anybody is interested, I'll take anybody. You don't need any specialized experience. I can show you how to use whatever tools or equipment that we'll be using. Basically, it's just nice to have somebody that can go out with me to help me with various tasks that I need to do. I can do it on my own, but it's much slower. So if I have somebody there to help me, things go a little more quickly. And and you know, you get to hike around, look at beautiful plants, and you know, if you're a student, it's a great way to build your resume, get volunteer experience, and learn some new skills, right? Being able to use a Trimble GPS unit, some basic familiarity with ArcGIS, or
maybe even some coding, who knows.
If I could get someone to code for me, oh, that would be great.
Like, I'll do the field work, you go and do the coding.
So if you were a computer science person and you wanted to help, there might be a spot for you.
Yeah, I'm actually working with a computer science graduate student right now on the app redesign and helping with integrating the map into our new app.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so basically, if you're interested in volunteering, hit us up. We'll find a spot for you.
Yeah, that also includes if you just want to come out and garden and,
Totally.
and don't have a garden of your own. Please come out and volunteer with us. We always appreciate the help. Jess, thank you so much for doing this with me today. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for viewing and tuning in to view. Next week, I believe we're going to have our director, Zach, is going to be
nice.
is going to be on Facebook Live with us. So that'll be exciting. So tune in next week, 10 a.m. on Wednesday. We're kind of trying to keep that schedule. And we'll see you next time.
Thank
Away
you.
we go.